What's up, and welcome to the Non-Fungible Creator Show. This is your host, Non-Fungible TC, Non-Fungible today and Non-Fungible tomorrow. And today we are so excited to have Rosco, who is the creator of Revoke.Cash, a go-to platform where people's wallet permission has been compromised. So how are you, Rosco?
I'm great. Thanks for having me on the show.
Thank you so much for being in this show. I reached out to you back in December, and now it's April, and I'm so glad that we were able to make it.
Definitely, yeah.
First of all, before you begin, Roscoe, can you share more to our audience about your background and what do you do, and about you in general?
Yeah, sure. So I'm a software engineer. I got involved with crypto first in 2017 when I heard from it, like from some colleagues that I was working with, and then about a year later, like in 2018, I really got involved in the space and started developing some of my own side projects and started going to conferences and all that. While I was still also studying, because I finished my master's in 2019. And ever since that, I have been like going full time into the crypto space essentially.
Okay, so you are considered one of those crypto NFT OGs, right? Because you were back in like 2017. That's like quite early. Like that's like 5 years ago. Like
it's interesting to think about it like that, because definitely at the time it didn't feel like that. But looking at how many people have entered the space in the past year or a couple of years, yeah, definitely it's been 5 years, but it definitely doesn't feel like 5 years. So
it felt much
yeah.
longer. So yeah, I know you are the creator of Revoke.Cash, and I was just wondering if there is a story behind it. What inspires you to do that? And I know you created Revoke.Cash back in 2019, right? So that's 2 years after entering the space. So what happened?
Yeah, it's interesting actually, because yeah, in 2018, 2019, sort of like DeFi was starting to be a thing. Like you had like Uniswap and you had Maker and these kinds of things. So then obviously tokens were like a big part of that. Maybe even the only part of that. Um, and it always felt weird to me that like you had to approve the app, like the app that you're using, like Uniswap, to spend basically all of your tokens, like all of your DAI, for example. And it wasn't really something that was talked about a lot. And then in 2019, I went to DEF CON in Osaka, and actually a friend of mine, Paul Berg, who created Sablier, he gave a presentation as well about this exact subject, about like the allowances, because one of the smart contracts that he had been working on had a bug that actually put like those funds at risk. It was like a testnet thing, so it was not very big at the time, but um, that kind of like showed the real world risks of that. And at that time there were like no big exploits with like allowances or anything. So like I said, it wasn't really talked about, but I felt like it was only a matter of time until those exploits would start happening. Um, and so I created Revoke.Cash, which like yeah, it's just like a dashboard that shows all of your token approvals and with like a button to revoke it. Um, and yeah, at the time I didn't know of any other tools, but I think the approved.zone tool was actually earlier than Revoke.Cash, but it wasn't really like a well used or well known tool. So I think Revoke was really like the first allowance dashboard thing to really take off and to get some popularity.
And I think it's amazing how you didn't do any paid promotions, right? Everything just
Yeah,
happened naturally. Yeah.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's yeah, I guess like also like every time like an exploit did happen, which like in 2020 and 2021 especially, like a lot of those exploits did happen. And then every time it was just sort of like a word of mouth spread, like, hey, what do I do to not get like scammed in this way? And like for a long time, like Revoke was the only tool to like pop up in those conversations. And then there were like some other tools developed after that as well, like the DBank approvals tool, which is a really good one, a really sleek one. But they recently they removed their functionality, so that's interesting. And then yeah, of course, Etherscan entered the same space later on as well. But I think that what sort of stands out about Revoke is just sort of the simplicity of the tool. That it's just very clear, and like there's obviously not a lot of like design or like fancy UI going on. It's just like a very simple list. But I think that is also like the strength of the product, and yeah, just sort of and I think that's as well as sort of being the first and continuously kind of adding upgrades has made it so that like right now Revoke is probably like the first name to pop in to like come up when talking about like approvals.
Yeah, absolutely. And so just for people who have never heard of Revoke.Cash before, right? Can you quickly run us through how does it work? So this is Revoke, right? And then you have like an input. So let's say I input my ENS or my wallet, right? So I can, just input. And so basically I just press enter, right? Is that how it works?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so it shows me tokens and NFTs. So I can actually switch between ERC20 tokens, which is like, Ether or, Shiba or Dogecoin or those type of stuff,
Exactly.
USDC, USDT. And then you have NFTs as well, right? So basically for tokens, let's say if I include unregistered tokens, right? So it shows what tokens were in my wallet, right? And whether I have, given allowance to like a smart contract or a platform. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly.
And I could also include zero balance, so it shows other type of tokens that has interacted with my wallet. So right now it says unlimited allowance to like a contract, right? And from what I see here is that unlimited ERC20 allowance is considered unharmful. So what does that actually mean when I see this?
Right. Yeah. So definitely, if people are interested in learning more, they should read like the full article on my website. But essentially, the thing is like these allowances are sort of required to interact with DeFi and sort of any kind of smart contract that deals with tokens, really. And that's just because of the design of the tokens. Like you need to set these allowances in order to do things like deposit on Aave or swap on Uniswap. And there's sort of two different ways in which you can approach that. One of them is sort of setting an unlimited allowance, which basically means that they can take as much tokens as needed, or you can set a very specific allowance for a very specific amount of tokens. So let's say if you are swapping 1,000 USDC for ETH, then you can choose to set an unlimited allowance or only for the 1,000 USDC. And the trade-off there is that if you set the limited allowance, it's more secure because you are only granting the allowance for the very tiny amount of tokens, but then that also costs more gas because you have to send a transaction every time. If like if next week you want to send the same transaction again, you have to set an approval again. And that is why a lot of applications and a lot of users instead use an unlimited allowance, so that you only need to send one approval for the rest of the time. So it's kind of a trade-off really between like security and convenience. And especially when gas fees were really high, like in 2021, early 2021, for example, like it could really make sense to use an unlimited allowance because otherwise you would be spending something like $40 to set like every time, in addition to like the fees that you already have to pay. But yeah, in general, the risk with unlimited allowances is that if there is a bug in the smart contract, for example, or if the smart contract itself like contains an exploit or something, then that smart contract can just take the money from your wallet. Like something that some people do is they deposit only like a small amount of tokens into a contract because they want to be safe. Like they don't want to risk everything in a smart contract. But then not everyone realizes that if you put like an unlimited allowance, then it doesn't matter that you only put a small amount in the contract because it has access to everything in your wallet, or like to all those tokens at least. So that's definitely something to be aware of and to think about.
Yeah, sometimes when I think about it, it's quite scary because when we talk about DeFi, right, everyone is chasing, the largest yield, right? Oh, you want 500%, 1000%. And then they start connecting the wallet and start approving tokens to those DeFi side, right? So basically that means like even though I am, depositing 100 token, right? You're basically approving infinite amount of token when you press accept, right? And usually you cannot control how much allowance to give them in those websites. If those website decides to walk through you, it basically means that it could drain all the token in your wallet. Is that what it means?
Yeah, and you have to set an approval for every token individually. So if you set an approval for USDC, then they can't take your DAI, for example, but they can take all of your USDC.
Yeah, so that's why your tool is very helpful, because if I don't feel comfortable giving them all of my USDC, I can just, update here like, 100 USDC, and that's the maximum per transaction, right?
Exactly. Well, in total, so not per transaction. So if you set like an allowance of 100 and then they take 100, then your allowance is set back to 0.
Okay,
does that
understood.
make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. And then when I want to deposit more, it'll ask me to provide unlimited allowance again. But then I can set it again. Something like that.
Exactly.
And that also works for NFTs, right? Because if I go to NFTs, it shows me like which allowance I have given. And if I want to revoke, I just revoke that unique token. That token within that collection. Is that correct?
So with an unlimited allowance for NFTs, it's for the whole collection. So if you set like an unlimited allowance on your Bored Apes and you have like 5 different Bored Apes, then that contract has access to all of them. And with NFTs, it's like the trade-off is a bit different than with just ERC20 tokens, because with NFTs, you like it's much more widespread to use the unlimited allowance as well, because with tokens you can set something like an allowance for 1000 USDC, but for NFTs you either set it for one token in the collection, or you set it for the entire collection. So if you want to set it for like 3 tokens, you have to send either 3 different transactions for every single token individually, or you just do the whole collection, which costs like a lot less in gas. So that is why, like, for NFTs, people even use like the unlimited allowance more than that people do for ERC20 tokens.
Okay, that's interesting, because basically by walking us through this, you kind of explain why token permission is very important, right? Basically, you're giving unlimited allowance to maybe a platform, a marketplace, to have access to your token. So my next question would be, okay, imagine if someone got compromised, right? They just suddenly lost all of the NFTs and lost some of the tokens. What should they do first immediately?
Yeah. So I think the advice really depends on sort of how they were compromised, because there are a lot of different ways in which like someone can get exploited or get hacked or scammed or whatever. And I'll actually say that like the most common way to get scammed in crypto is not through allowances, but rather through like stealing your private key. Like maybe you get like a phishing website and they ask you to enter your seed phrase or your private key or something like that. And then once they have your private key or they have your seed phrase, allowances don't really matter anymore because they just have access to your whole account. So they can send transactions from your account like as if they were you. So really the first thing to figure out is kind of like what happened. And it's often difficult to figure out what happened, especially if like you're not super familiar with the space and how things technically work. But in general, if one good way to think about it is if someone sent like Ethereum, like the Ether token from your wallet, then you kind of know that this has nothing to do with approvals because approvals cannot be used to send like the regular ETH token. The only way for someone to just like steal your ETH is like if they compromise your wallet. So if you lose your seed phrase, and usually when someone steals your seed phrase, they will also steal your ETH. But in the case that like some of your tokens or some of your NFTs are stolen or they disappear from your wallet, but your ETH stays there, I think that is a good sign that something happened with approvals. And in that case, it's still difficult to figure out what happened, and hopefully like if there's like a big exploit going on, you will usually see things on Twitter about it, and you will see like people talking about it, and that can be a way to figure it out. But it's always difficult to really understand what's going on. So probably the better solution is to sort of preemptively keep track of your allowances. So usually like once NFTs or tokens or ETH like leaves your wallet because of a scam, it's already kind of too late. And sometimes that's not the case. Like sometimes a hacker will take like part of what they can take and they will leave some other part because they don't know about it, like they forgot or something like that. And in those cases, you probably do want to try to recover that or try to save that. But as far as allowances go, the best thing you can do as a user is just like maybe like depending on how much you use ETH, like maybe once a week or once a month, you just go to Revoke.Cash and you check what you have. Like, and let's say if you have 10 Bored Apes and you have an allowance to some contract for those, that's worth a lot of money. So you probably want to be like really careful with that. Like of course, the more money that's at risk, like the sort of the worse it gets. So yeah, like really the biggest thing is that just preemptively try to keep track of that rather than after the fact.
Yeah, it's important to, like, as you said, have a habit, to always keep track of the allowances, right? As you said, some hacker could give allowance to something, but if you don't keep track it using Revoke.Cash, you can't notice that they've done that, right? So out of curiosity, whenever we give a permission to a smart contract, right? Basically what it means is that we're telling the blockchain to announce to everyone that I give permission to this contract to use this amount of tokens or NFT to do certain things, right? So in order to do that, we have to pay gas fees because I have to, record it on a blockchain. So as a rule of thumb, does it mean that every time when I sign different type of things, I'll have to check whether I'm paying gas or not, right? If I'm not, like, let's say, for example, I log into OpenSea, they always ask you to sign something. That is a bit different than signing with permissions, right?
Yeah, that's correct. So generally, when you set an allowance, you have to pay gas because it is a blockchain transaction, and with signatures, it works a bit different because like just signing things that doesn't get broadcasted to the network. But that doesn't mean that signing things without paying gas is like safe necessarily. Also in the context of allowances, because some tokens use a standard called EIP 2612, which essentially allows you to set an approval with just a signature. And that is like, generally that is better, because then you don't need to set like an unlimited allowance. Like if you go to Uniswap and you want to swap 1000 USDC, if they support that standard, then you just sign for the approval, don't pay gas, and then you just do the swap. And after you do the swap, your allowance is back to zero. So you kind of have the best of both worlds in that sense. But the drawback is also that also means that if you sign something, you still have to like really know what you're signing, because you might as well be signing like an approval to someone, to like some malicious party. And that is mostly the case with like phishing websites. Like if you are on the real OpenSea website or on the real Uniswap website, then it's generally pretty safe to assume that the signatures are fine. Like you are signing legitimate messages, but there's also like always the risk that you get like phished, because you are on Uniswap.to instead of IO. So yeah.
This is like happening. Like unfortunately, this is also happening for Revoke.Cash, because recently I found out that people are using Revoke.app, right? So they're not using Revoke.Cash. So as a founder and as a creator of such a wonderful tool, what do you feel about this? What do you want to say to all of these scammers, or as a community, how can we bring awareness to this, right? How do we help other people? Because when you are using Revoke.Cash, you are quite desperate already, right? Because you have already been compromised. Imagine going to Revoke.app.
Yeah.
And so what is your thought to this?
Yeah, it's a very difficult problem, and I guess there's a few things to unpack there. So Revoke.Cash, first off, it's open source, right? So that means that people can inspect the source code, which is a good thing, but it also means that scammers can copy the source code exactly, and everything will look and work exactly the same, and then they can just change a very tiny part of the website. So it actually makes it sort of easier for scammers to create a phishing website, which is sort of the bad thing about having it open source. Yeah, like whereas like something like OpenSea, it's pretty difficult to for OpenSea, it's pretty difficult to like really build the exact same website to like phish someone. But for open source, it's much easier. Which is that's difficult. So and the other thing is that the domain name is Revoke.Cash, which it's not like a .com or something. So like I guess in the modern days we're kind of used to like having a lot of different kinds of domain extensions. Like maybe 10 years ago, if something wasn't a .com, then it probably is a scam. But nowadays, .cash is fine, .xyz is fine, IO app. So it's very difficult to like know whether this is like the legit site. So one thing that you can do is like, look at the Twitter account. Look at my account, see what I link to, see what this Twitter account links to. And these are like very difficult things to do in the moment, because like if you just find out about this website, you don't know who I am, you don't know about the Twitter account, so it's pretty difficult to really know, to be sure of that, especially if you don't have like the technical knowledge to verify things yourself. So one thing that you can do is, if you are on Revoke.Cash, maybe we can show it to people. I don't know if you like, do you have MetaMask installed in this wallet?
Not on this
Maybe we
browser.
can. Okay, no worries. And like if you don't want to like show or connect your wallet, that's like, of course, that's fine. But whenever you click the revoke button on Revoke.Cash, you will get a MetaMask pop-up. And in that pop-up, you can actually verify what it's doing, like what the transaction is doing. And this is still like the UI is not very good. Like it's still very difficult for a regular user to understand what the MetaMask pop-up is saying. But if you try to like really see what's happening, like MetaMask will tell you, oh, this is trying to set an allowance, which is also kind of weird phrasing, because like revoking an allowance is kind of different from like setting an allowance. But what you can verify is in the MetaMask pop-up that it is setting an allowance to 0. So MetaMask will tell you, oh, you're setting an allowance, and then you can inspect it, and it will tell you like how much tokens you are approving. And if it says anything else than 0, then you're being scammed. Unless, of course, you did the update thing where you say, oh, I want to update the allowance to 100 tokens, then of course it should show 100. But if it shows something unexpected, then you are being scammed. And in the case of NFTs, it will show you true or false. So it won't show you a number, but it will show you true or false. And if it shows you true, that means you are setting an allowance. And if it tells you false, then you are revoking the allowance. Yeah. So in this case, it says give permission to access your lit. And if you click edit permission now, then it will show you, see, proposed approval limit, 0 lit. So if you see 0 lit, then this is just a revoke and you're safe. You're not being scammed. But for a scam site, that might say something like 1000 lit instead of 0 lit or whatever. And maybe you can show it for NFTs as well, so that people also sort of know what to look at. That's probably easier than me telling you about it. And so here, this is a bit more difficult. So here you have to click on data. It says set approval for all. And that's too bad. Actually, can you click on hex maybe? And scroll down. Yeah, this is actually this is more difficult, because sometimes if you go on data, if you go to data, then sometimes MetaMask will show you like the decoded data. So it will show you true or false. And if it doesn't show you that, it's extra difficult to figure out. So here now it says it. So approved false. So that means you're revoking it. But if it says approved true, then you're being scammed again. So that would be the independent way to verify, like regardless of like the website, you can check what is going on. And I hope that MetaMask will improve the UI further, and I'm sure that they will, because they're very aware of sort of these issues as well, to make it just more clear what is happening still for users. So it's definitely not ideal. It will always be difficult to really verify, especially if you're not familiar with the website. If you are, I think a good thing to do is just raise awareness of the website. Like it's Revoke.Cash, not something else. So yeah, the more people know about like what the domain is, what the Twitter address is, and like things like that, then the more difficult it will become to scam people as well.
Yeah, and I think you answered my question quite well, because I wanted to ask you, everyone goes to Revoke.Cash, right? But how can they trust you, right? Because you never know, right?
Right.
And what you were demonstrating is that don't trust me, first of all, if you know coding, check out the source code, understand it. If you're a programmer, look at it. But even if you do not understand the source code, you can actually look at what is being approved, right? As what you said, whether you're giving true permission or false permission, whether you're giving 0 token or 1,000 token, right? And that's how people can trust you. And I think, throughout this interview, we are able to know more about the person behind this simple but very complicated, in terms of the technical side website, right?
Yeah, definitely.
And also to let people know more about you. Out of curiosity, what are you working on lately besides Revoke.Cash?
Yeah. So I late last year, early this year, I started a startup with a friend of mine called Chaingrep, which is sort of like it's going to be a search engine for blockchains and a new kind of block explorer, and it's kind of related to some of the issues that we talked about as well, about like how it's kind of difficult for regular users to really understand what's going on. Like with the Metamask pop-up, for example, it's pretty difficult to really know what they are doing. And I think the same thing is true for a lot of sort of block explorers in the space. Like I think Etherscan is an amazing tool for myself and for a lot of people, but it's also very difficult for just a regular user to use. And so we're trying to sort of make the blockchain more insightful for regular users, so that they can understand what they're doing and what is happening on chain as well.
So this is a more user-friendly type of Etherscan that would be available in the future.
Yeah, we're still in development right now. If you go to chaingrep.com, you can join the waiting list. And we're definitely trying to get something out there as soon as possible. But it's also it's a difficult problem to solve, of course, because inherently the blockchain is a pretty technical and complicated concept. So making that accessible is it's still a challenge, of course.
Absolutely. And I know you have done a NFT project in the past, is that correct?
So I think you're referring to the allbastards.com website. So this is not these I didn't make these NFTs myself, but I am a big fan of them. They were created by a Turkish artist named Berk. And I got involved with the project pretty early in March of last year, when I think one day after they launched, and I thought they're great because essentially this is an AI generated CryptoPunk. Yeah, so essentially you take all the CryptoPunks and you combine them, and then you have like an AI program generate new ones, and some of them look pretty clean, like regular punks, but with some different colors. But others look completely messed up, and I think that is what makes this collection really interesting. And so I created this gallery kind of website that makes it just more easier to just browse them and really take in the beauty of this NFT project. Yeah.
And I was sorry to interrupt you, but I just think this is a very good opportunity to tell people about permissions and stuff like that, right? I just wanted to ask you about one thing that people might mix up, right? Under MetaMask, there is this thing called connected site. And just now I connected to Revoke.Cash. So if I press disconnect, does it help me revoke my permission and I'm good to go?
No, this is it's a misconception that I hear a lot. Because actually, if you disconnect your account in MetaMask, it doesn't do anything on chain. It doesn't do anything for your security. The only thing that it means is that that website cannot see your account anymore. So if you go to their website, normally if you have the website connected, then you go to the website and the website will recognize you. The website will know, oh, you are non-fungible tc.eth. And if you disconnect that, they won't know who you are anymore when you visit the website. But if you granted any permissions, those are still there. And in terms of security, it doesn't do anything. Yeah, so here now it says now you have to reconnect the wallet again. But that's only for reading and like only seeing who you are. So it's like a
Yeah,
very
I think that
different thing.
yeah, that's an important thing because a lot of people, mix up and spread misinformation, right? Thinking that they
Yeah,
revoke.
definitely.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and that's
yeah,
the
it's
reason why
something.
when you use your platform, you have to pay gas because you need to let the miners know that, hey, I'm revoking my permission. And I think people need to understand that when Revoke Cash asks you to pay gas fees, right, you're not paying Rosco anything. He's not asking you for money. It's
Yeah,
actually just registering on the blockchain, telling people that, hey, I no longer give permission to this platform or a smart contract to have access to my funds.
yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, so that's also like a misconception that some people have. Like there was in February around like the whole drama with OpenSea, sort of like people thought OpenSea was being exploited with allowances and like the site crash and everything. And then like after that, there were like some people as well calling me like a scammer because it costs money. But yeah, like that's just
Yeah, yeah,
transaction costs. Like
yeah.
I don't make the Ethereum network. But yeah,
Which
which was
really goes
funny.
on to our next question, like how can our viewers or the community, support you or maybe, participate in whatever you're doing?
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think the biggest help is just sort of spreading the word, spreading awareness so that like these kind of like sites can't really take over or like scam people with like revoke.app or revoke. Some other thing. Um, and yeah, definitely like follow me on Twitter and get involved with like other things that I'm doing. Join the wait list for Chaingrep and sort of spread the word around those projects. That's probably the most help to me.
Thank you so much, Roscoe. I think before we end, is there anything you would like to share?
Um, no, I
Not at
think I
this
think
moment.
uh, I, th- I think we've discussed the most important things. Yeah.
I do think there is one thing that's very important. I think I need a bite from you that actually says that the website name is revoke.cash and not
Yeah,
revoke.app.
that's a
I
very
need you
good
to
one.
say
Yeah,
that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Now
yeah.
people can know it's revoke.cash.
The domain is revoke.cash and not something else, not revoke.app.
I think that is the best fight that we could ever have to raise awareness to and people could really
Exactly.
understand what is happening when they revoke a permission, when they approve a permission. And on behalf of everyone who used your platform, I just want to say, thank you. Use this opportunity to say thank you because this you are a pioneer at your time. Back then in 2019, you knew something like this could be exploited, and then you built a tool that people can use. So I think you deserve credit when credit is due. So thank you so much for creating this platform, and thank you so much for coming on this channel to share more, to educate the community. And I think
Yeah,
our time
great.
is pretty much it. Thank you so much, Roscoe, and hopefully I can see you another time.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Bye bye.